not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psychology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
Friday Java. On the 23rd of February 2018, we have a Numbers Man presentation coming up this week in SL Macroeconomics program. And we have some special program for African History Month. We've been working on a production of Black Panther, and we continue to add a few things to it, including some financial figures from the box office. We'll get that out this weekend also, and we're also working on an open source report. That's our technical program. We'll have a little bit of that here. We'll be talking about a system in Nairobi, Kenya, for charging that allows people to charge their purchases via their mobile phones. Anyway, nonetheless, we'll start off here. I forgot, from WBRN Radio in Boston on the Boston Red Network, and we are working on improving some things, some of our technical references. In the coming weeks, you will see those. We have some baseball scores today also. Spring training is open, and they are ready. The Olympics are still going on the Korean Peninsula. And we'll start this off with the unfortunate tragedy down in Florida. And what happened there, a lot of things around that. We were reading a Reuters report that the NRA is now back to their old campaign about elites. They call it elites, that are the ones behind the protests that happened as a result of the murders there in Florida. This is one of the things that we always look at when these events occur. They've been trying to tag people that speak out against guns as elites, they call them. And that's been a buzzword in Republican campaigns for a very long time. and particularly in the campaign that DJ Trump ran. And this is a little bit of it. This is from the BBC. The comment there by Wayne Lapierre said opportunists are using the tragedy to expand gun control and abolish U.S. gun rights. That is an outright lie. Period. These rights. The problem here is that there is a little bit confusion here between what are rights and what are privileges. Much of the gun legislation is privileges under a marker of, quote unquote, from the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. But that has nothing to do with that. In fact, the history of that particular amendment, it was a pro-slavery amendment. And this is what happens when you miss out on the history. You have no idea why the Second Amendment was placed there to begin with. What we are finding out now, there are a number of problems in Florida, in Broward County. I was talking from a fellow from Miami about the whole situation in Broward County, and he was explaining to me down by Fort Lauderdale. Anyway, nonetheless, the local sheriff there, his name is, I believe, Scott Israel. Nonetheless, Sheriff Israel, referring to a deputy that was actually there. Now, this deputy was armed. This counters the assumption by DJ Trump that arming teachers. This has been brought up before in the classroom. There was an article, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, but I may be wrong on that one. I should have written it down, from a former assistant principal in Mississippi that had actually confronted an armed person in the 90s. And he was able to disarm this person, but he said he had nightmares, etc., for 6 months to a year after the event. So it's not as easy as sitting in the White House and dreaming up these schemes. But in Florida, there was a deputy named Scott Peterson who has resigned after being suspended by Sheriff Israel. I'm devastated, sick to my stomach. He never went in. This sheriff's deputy, instead of confronting Cruz, he stayed outside. You see, these kinds of things. Peterson, 54, was a school, what they call resource officer at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, and was on the site as armed and in uniform when the shooting took place. And he did nothing about it. He stayed outside. He said the video footage showed Peterson arriving at the building where the shooting broke out about 90 seconds after the first shots were fired, and that he remained outside for about 4 minutes. The attack lasted about 6 minutes, the sheriff said. Asked what Peterson should have done, the sheriff said, went in and addressed the killer and killed the killer. No doubt. Would have been rather simple to do, because this killer was not in a defensive mode. He was in committing urban terrorism. He was not trained. He was just basically shooting, and his attention was to shooting. Peterson has, this is from the BBC, has not made any comments. Officers are reportedly guarding his house. Probably so, because people are not very happy with Peterson. Peterson gave no reason for why he did not go into the building where the shooter was. Unclear if he should face charges here. Also said he would not be releasing the video showing Peterson standing outside. This is deplorable. Said that he would not be releasing the video showing Peterson outside, and might never do so depending on the prosecutor in the criminal case against the 19-year-old suspect. There, and evidently this Nicolas Cruz, as somebody was known to the authorities there, period. Now this NRA character here, his time is out. One of the things that's happening here, on the 24th of March, I believe, there is a situation that be a national action in Washington and in major cities across the U.S., and there have been demonstrations. Students have walked out all across the U.S. Now, depending obviously on the size of this, this will be reminiscent of when Dr. King and his assistants in Birmingham, Alabama, used students. You're seeing not only high schoolers, but you're seeing elementary students going out, having die-ins. Those things are something the NRA cannot counter, period, on the attack at people being elitists. It just will not stick. Now, with some of their hardcore supporters, yes, that will go. But their problem is not their hardcore supporters. Their problem is convincing the middle, period, out there. Let me just finish this up. Employed by local police and sheriff's offices. These are the types of, why was Deputy Peterson there? He was school resource officer, the local school police officer. That started in the 70s, basically to intimidate students. They started deploying school patrol officers, etc., that were armed within the schools. Prior to that, you had counselors that were standing in the hall, that sort of thing, there more or less to conduct students down hallways in many places. But that has not been the case now. You have armed officers, and in some schools, more armed officers, and also you have detection devices. Would not have helped here. Now, for Peterson, he had been in his position since 2009. We're now in 2018, so almost 10 years. He had worked for the sheriff's office since 1985. Records show his salary was $75,000, $673, period. Concerns, of course, were raised there about the entire saga. Will the school reopen? Teachers will be allowed back in today. Both students and teachers are invited to reorient on Sunday. The three-story building that was attacked is to be torn down. Are teachers going to be armed? No, this is a silly situation. They've talked about this all over the place, that they've been able to bring this conversation out. Conservative Political Action Committee in CPAC in Washington, LaPierre reiterated his group's backing. Well, it wouldn't have really mattered if the teacher was armed like Peterson and did not follow through. But what this is doing is putting teachers in a situation whereby they themselves will be the targets. And also the idea of teachers having guns. Now, in some classrooms, yes, teachers have guns, but that doesn't stop someone from, say, shooting on the playground, period. So this whole idea, shooters won't walk into if 20% of the people have guns. That's not necessarily true at all. Out in Las Vegas, there were plenty of guns around at the concert there. The gentleman involved, there was no problem at all. From the American Federation of Teachers Union disagrees that arming teachers is a solution. This is Randy Vingarter. Anyone who wants guns in school has no understanding of what's going on inside, or worse, and don't care. And there's no doubt about that. You have these patrol types. The survivors organized rallies against the shooting in Washington on the 24th. That's according to the Washington Post. This is a BBC report. And survivors last week, a deadly shooting have called for stricter gun laws, prompting the nation's activist movement. Never again. That's the hashtag on Twitter, and we'll have that on the show here coming up. The idea of raising the age from 18 to 24. This is for long guns, for sidearms, pistols, or whatever you want to call them, 9mm type guns. You have to be 21 for those. in most localities under the federal regime. So this is where they are in Florida and coming to a nation near you. And hundreds of school districts have seen high schoolers and other students literally walk out of their classrooms and are in the streets. Now, this is something the NRA cannot counter. It's a situation that is very, very volatile for them. We'll start our roundup now. And of course, we will have, obviously, sports at the end of the cast here. Just taking a quick look. Headline kind of interesting here. Scott Walker wants to save Obamacare in Wisconsin. The governor wants to prop up the state's individual market with $20 million program that would compensate, health insurers for high cost patients, so they won't hike premiums. And this is one of the situations that premiums will go up. One of the nation's most militant anti-Obamacare governors is making strengthening health care laws a key plank of his re-election campaign. Period. He wants to prop up the affordable care market with $200 million program that would compensate insurance companies for higher cost patients so they don't hike the premiums for everybody. He would enshrine some of Obamacare's protections for people with pre-existing conditions. It's starting a turnabout for a chief executive who repeatedly called for repeal and replace of Obamacare. Democrats recently flipped a state district that Trump carried by 17 points. Walker sees the handwriting on the wall. Old boss Walker sees a situation that is coming, a freight train that is coming, period. For individual coverage, premiums rose an average of 36% this year alone. And that is a problem can actually only be addressed in a national situation. Even though I might disagree with the Affordable Care Act until someone decides what to do in Washington by doing this reinsurance, we actually are protecting the taxpayers who might have to keep paying for the increased premiums. That's from a state representative named Kevin Peterson, who co-authored the reinsurance bill. Cleared the legislature. Walker is expecting to sign it. The irony of the approach known as reinsurance will likely help preserve Obamacare market in Wisconsin, even as Trump continues to take action against it. The federal government would contribute 75% of the funding for the reinsurance program, with state covering the rest 25%. Other governors have embraced reinsurance funds, including in Alaska under Bill Walker, in Minnesota under Mark Dayton, and out in Oregon under Kate Brown. Republican governors in Iowa and Oklahoma withdrew applications to the Trump administration for similar plans in Iowa after Trump asked to deny the request. According to a Washington Post story, in Oklahoma after the administration failed to act in a timely manner there. Walker's plan, which he has taunted on the campaign like stops at a half dozen hospitals across the state for the past month, infuriates Democrats who blame the Teuton, boss Walker, for undermining Obamacare, no doubt about that. He has the audacity to say he's going to clean up Washington's mess. Well, now, no. This is his mess. So that's from John Arpenbach, who voted against creating the program. Critics say Walker, who recent poll showed has roughly equal approval and disapproval ratings. In other words, boss Walker is in trouble. No clear challenge to boss Walker has emerged, and this is part of the problem right here in a crowded Democratic primary. There is always a problem, particularly on the quote-unquote Democratic side, which tends to have progressive people, where there are too many candidates. What this equates to there is personal interest against the collective interests of progressive people, particularly if there are 2 or 3 progressive people running effectively on the same platform. Now, if you say in a Democratic if there's a Democratic primary in California, it's just open. You can be a Democrat, Republican, a Green, or whatever, and you're all thrown in the same thing, and they pick out the winners, and someone goes into a runoff, which is much better than a ranked choice, which is a racist system that's run in some states. Once Walker signs this reinsurance bill, his administration will have to formally submit the plan to DJ Trump's administration for approval before the next Affordable Care, Obamacare enrollment period in the fall. Obamacare gives states flexibility to develop their own health care plans beginning, that was in 2017, as long as they meet certain conditions, including covering the same people and not adding to the federal deficit. That'll be a hard take to do. Nonetheless, Walker's amassed a $3.7 million campaign fund during the second half of the year and has $4.2 million in cash. Once Walker sorry about that. The reinsurance proposal isn't the first time Walker has used healthcare law to put his stamp on the healthcare system. He used the law to shift 1,000 residents from the state's Medicare program, I think it's called Badger Care, to Obamacare Exchange, where they got heavily subsidized private insurance. Wisconsin, where roughly 225,000 people enrolled in the healthcare plan through healthcare.gov during the law's most recent enrollment period, will cover roughly $50 million of reinsurance program costs, while the federal government will pay an estimated $150 million there. Wisconsin market remains competitive, with 11 insurance companies offering individual plans this year, in contrast to states with only a single insurer. That's according to the Kaiser Family Foundation. The state's residents still suffer after several companies headed for the exits for the last 2 years, with premiums rising 36% in Wisconsin. That is a very big situation. This is a time we have to respond. This spike was due to insurers' uncertainty over whether the White House would continue critical payments that help them to cover low-income customers' out-of-the-pocket expense. DJ Trump scrapped the program in October. So in other words, this is one instance where a governor, Boss Walker here, has faced a new reality, that he is forced now to go to quote-unquote Obamacare, because the reality out there is that DJ Trump and all these characters that live in Disneyland can talk until their face turned blue about health care, but the problem is they have absolutely no solution to it. As people are denied care, what starts to happen is that insurance premiums will go up, and that will affect everyone, period. So that is a reality here. Incidentally, Politico will leave here, but anyway, the majority back stricter gun laws, but the public split on arming teachers. That is a poll. We've always been a little bit leery when they just say poll. Now, this is obviously just a Politico headline here on which poll they're talking. Oh, okay. According to CBS, 2/3, 2 in 3 Americans, 65% said they would back more stringent laws on firearm sales, making an 8-point increase in support of stronger gun laws. Now, this is a CBS News poll here, and you'll see some fluctuation there. Findings that show broad support for measures aimed at curbing gun violence, and you'll see more of this. 85% of Americans say they favor increased spending on mental health screening. 75% back strengthening background checks. This is at Stoneman Douglas. Americans were divided over whether teachers and educators should obviously carry guns. Well, that is an issue that they don't need to address here, as overall school only 33% supported the president's performance. So DJ Trump continues to have very low poll ratings, and that will dog him for the remainder of his administration. Let me start. Well, we have the people at the University of Virginia, but let's start out here with some polling. This is on Thursday, and we're almost tempted not to do the Rasmussen report anymore. They have DJ Trump at 48%, way out of line for most of the polls. The Harvard-Harris at 45%, Quinnipiac at 37%, the Economist YouGov at 44%, Reuters at 40%, and we won't even get a congressional approval rating. It doesn't even matter. Generic ballot here. It's still too early to look at this as any trend, as YouGov has the Democrats up by 8, Reuters up by 8 also, and Harris, Harvard-Harris at 5%. Similarly, when you look at wrong track, right track, you have right track 37%, wrong track 54%. This is Harvard-Harris. From Reuters, the right track at 31%, wrong track at 57%. These have been constant. What effect they have on the election of people? Little, if any, period. Generic ballot here. This is Quinnipiac, has the Democrats up by 15. This is on Tuesday. Gravis, Nelson Scott, they have Nelson up by 4. That's a Republican post, incidentally. That is in Florida. And we won't even give the Utah one here because Romney has 60, and I have no idea who Wilson is. He's not in the ball game period here. So let me just we covered this is a Reuters dispatch here from Washington on LaPierre and what LaPierre had to say there. Elites don't care not one who about women. Elites don't care not one whit about American school system and school children, LaPierre told a friendly audience. Well, that was at CPAC. The goal is to eliminate the Second Amendment, our firearm freedom, so that they can eradicate all individual freedoms. An outright lie. At the White House, DJ Trump said he discussed the idea to stem gun violence in schools with the ERA. He called a group of great American patriots. Well, that word has been used too many times. I've heard people that are not patriots call themselves patriots, and they're confused, delusional, period. Chuck Schumer condemned LaPierre's comments and said the NRA was once again spewing pathetic, out-of-touch ideas, blaming everyone but the guns. No doubt about that. Situation. You can always go to places like the CPAC conference here, and you can, spill these crazy things, ideas out there, and that's an audience that would be receptive to nuttery, but at the same time, when these young kids start to hit the TV cameras, it'll be Birmingham all over again, and the NRA knows that it's not a position they'll be in. It'll be like the waffling Boss Walker trying to do something about the 36% increase in insurance coverage in the state of Wisconsin. You want to spend a lot of time in the Washington Post here. Period. There's an interesting article here. You can read it. Won't go much into it about Robert Mueller and DJ Trump. They're both in their 70s. One went to draft deferment, and and the other one went into the Marine Corps. That was Mueller. He went into the Marine Corps and led a platoon during the Vietnam War. DJ Trump, who always likes to speak of patriotism, etc., never, as they say, donned the shores of Vietnam nor a training camp, period. So that begins to be a problem there. You can't talk about people like Mueller that are true patriots, according to the definition of a patriot, and someone that was on the sideline doing other things, sort of like this Dick Cheney character, period. This is another one here. Lock her up. You've heard those stories. Conservative battle the left without a clear foe. The first day of the year, of this year's CPAC conference. We cover it, and if we have time, we'll cover it again. But the CPAC conference is, as they say, boxing with shadows, and there's no one in the shadow. Talk to impeachment threat to Trump, period. And from the fix, Glenn Beck. I don't hear very much about old Glenn Beck anymore. The event known as CPAC, the way sees that its name no longer fits. This is not a small government or constitutional American conservative event anymore. That is from the Blaze founder and radio talk host. This is dangerous populism and nationalism. As I wrote this week, CPAC has changed dramatically since Trump's election, from a government where Trump believed he would be too controversial in 2016 when Beck was a keynote speaker, to one that embraced Trump's America First view. Exhibits can be inclusive there. Far-right politician Le Pen, who addressed Le Pen actually addressed it at Marianne Le Pen, who addressed the conference. I'm not offended when I hear DJ Trump say American First. This is Machanda Le Pen said to Cheers, I want British first for British people, French first for French people. Told the Washington Post last year, this is Marie Le Pen. She considers herself the political heir of Jean-Marie Le Pen, her grandfather and founder of the French National Front Party. Now, this is Machand Le Pen. Let me get this right. Marie Le Pen, Machand's aunt, and was a runner-up in last year's French election. But then she sort of ran out of things. Period. France is in the process of passing from the elder daughter of the Catholic Church to a little niece of it. Anyway, this is just crazy. Machand Le Pen and the National Front. Beck sees traits of nationalist ideology promoted by the World National Conservative Movement, a Russian-based alliance of political extremists that Beck described as a Nazi movement repackaged. He's right about that. So Glenn Beck, a classic conservative, at one time a warrior, now sees, period, this Machand Le Pen. She disagreed with her grandfather's characterization of the gas chambers, but she said he was right about lots of things, I imagine. So anyway, this is what's going on there. Incidentally, for those that want to read about the Russian movement, is the Fourth Way, I believe, was the book. We reviewed it here once. It's been a while since we reviewed it, but nonetheless, it just shows you basically what the right wing is up to, and perhaps next year they will book Richard Spence. Well, Le Pen is more than Richard Spence. What is happening is the right has to move more and more to the right. They moved into fascism. Of course, when you had Bannon, who is no longer around there, but you still have Miller in the White House, these people are Nazis. Make no mistake about it. And what has happened with the industrial capitalist society in which we live, the corporate leaders of corporate America have basically went along with this regime, the DJ Trump regime, to get a tax cut. Now they've got a tax cut in more quote-unquote business-friendly legislation, which now bankrupt a refinery in Pennsylvania is wanting some legislation rewritten because they get certain credits for blending ethanol or corn-based fuels into their particular situations. But they owe the EPA over $300 million. So in other words, a situation where these people are backtracking all over the place. And now we're looking at the economy, which we'll talk about. A numbers man, Walmart came in with some disappointing results. And then we are looking at some Republicans, such as Senator Tom Cotton, picking cotton out of Arkansas. You can imagine him with a cotton sack. Talking about the use of less immigrants because of robotics. Now, it's very interesting. They talk about robotics would be in restaurants and various other places. They will indeed be there. People that are washing dishes and those kinds of things that can be robotized. And various other things. The use of kiosks in restaurants where you would do your ordering there. In other words, you would push a button for whatever the menu is, and you would get that menu, so they would not have to send a wait staff out to take your order. It would go directly to the kitchen where it would be there, and then they would send someone out to place the dish or whatever on your table. It wouldn't come as a conveyor belt, I assume. But nonetheless, I could cut down on the number of people that were wait staff in the restaurant. The same thing in fast food, and you see a lot of that now. Those burgers and whatever they have are coming down the conveyor belts. The cooking of the burgers and all that stuff is automated, and it will be more automated. So what it equates to will be less people, sort of like an Amazon warehouse is part of the time. Let's go to the University of Virginia, and then we'll go to sport. This is by Kyle Kondik and Jeffrey Skilling. They are writing on the 20th of February, rating the new Pennsylvania. We talked about this, assuming that a new court-drawn U.S., this is the takeaways as they call it, Democrats should be able to cut into the Keystone State's current 13-5 Republican House majority. Keystone State, Pennsylvania, has 18 representatives and 13 are Republicans. The new draft creates one easy for the Democrats to pick up 3 Republican-held toss-ups and 2 other GOP sites that might be Democratic targets, with an eye on possibly winning a House majority in November. Weeks away, we plot a potential seat by seat Democratic plan to narrow the majority. No doubt they need that. The Keystone State stands out for having arguably the best Republican gerrymandering in the country when you deal with 13-5, no doubt about that. And this is something you don't hear when you hear about the so-called Russian exploitation of the election. But what you don't hear is gerrymandering, voter attacks on voters, legal ways to discourage people from voting, such as challenging their legal addresses, scrubbing them from the rolls for not voting in a number of elections. Those kinds of things are getting to be very, very detrimental voter suppression. Now, Republicans are suing over the map. There's always a chance that the map may be overturned, even though legal expert, this is Rick Hansen at the University of California, Irvine, considers that unlikely. In some cases, we don't know which members will be running in which districts. But despite the uncertainty, we have decided to issue a new rating for the new districts. Period. Now, these are some of the districts here in Pennsylvania. And there's P13, P2, Safe Democrat, P4, no rating there. It is open, and they have a toss-up district in P6, P7, and P17, likely a Democrat district. That is Matt Cartwright. Now, when we have some safe Republican districts here, I don't see any change there. Now, this is the crystal ball ratings and prospective incumbents in the new districts. And we go down. Oops. We'll try to go down. If our pointer cooperates with us. Crystal ball. Oh, whoops. Okay, 2012-2016 data from new Pennsylvania congressional map here. It shows some of these districts here. P1, Clinton won that one by roughly 2 points. President Obama 2 points, so it hasn't changed very much there. P2, Clinton won it by 72 to 24 for DJ Trump. Same with Obama. It's a Democratic district. 90% there, 91% for Obama. That is P3, P4, basically about the same. Clinton did about a point better. P5, 62 there, yeah, it's, and 64 for Obama. P6, 52 and 50 for Obama. A little bit closer there, but DJ Trump only got 43% of the vote. Now, P7, very, very close one there. Clinton pulled it off by about a percentage point. President Obama pulled it off 52, almost we'll say 53 to 45. And then we get into these very red districts here where Clinton got 43% of the vote. DJ Trump, 53% of the vote, a 10-pointer there. But at the same time, President Obama, this is P8, President Obama won it 55.2 to 43 points. So it was totally different there. P9 is a Republican district. P10 is, it was a Republican there. Willard Romney won it 52%. DJ Trump, about the same. P11, about the same. Those are Republican districts. P12 also. P12 is an interesting district. P13, Republican district here. President Obama got by 37. She was 29. P13 basically about the same. P14, she was 33%. President Obama was 40%. But again, Willard Romney got 58% of the vote there. P16, there's no difference there. So start looking at some of these. DJ Trump, pre-17, he got, 48%. She got 46%. President Obama got 47%. Willard Romney, 52%. And you go into P18, that was all Clinton at 61.7 and 63. So, again, some of the Pennsylvania was already going to see a lot of change in House delegation because 5 of the 18 incumbents are retiring and the 6th, former Murray, was removed. That was in Pennsylvania 18. Having a new map, remember, let's see, P18 as P14 in other districts only because even more Republicans on the new map. It does draw both Lamb and Sarkozy out of it onto the new map. Sarkozy lives in a deeply Democratic Pittsburgh seat. That's the new Pennsylvania 18. Some of this the drawing here was so gerrymandered it was pathetic. Staying in the Pittsburgh area, a longtime representative there was his name, Mike Doyle, saw his district renumbered to 18, but still a safe Democratic seat. Moving to Philadelphia. Onto the new map, it also has free safe seats P2, P1, and P4, although they aren't perfectly One P2, P4 will be in open seats depending on the choice of Representative Brandon Boyle, who currently has about half of the district. And P5 now represents the clearest pickup in the country. We were calling it Safe Democrats. That's P5. No, I said P9. P5. Okay. The aforementioned Costello is a clear loser in the remap because his southeast Pennsylvania down around there is moved to a Democratic situation there. That's southeast Pennsylvania now. Contains all of Chester County, an affluent high suburb that, from a tiny win by Willard Romney, 9-pointer by Hillary Monster Clinton. So, the Lehigh Valley, joining those two in the toss-up column, is P7. That is north of Philadelphia. The district features part of the old district, currently represented by retiring Charlie Dent. He's gone. So they got some retirements here. You got retirements, all over the map. We'll talk about more retirements coming up. The conclusion here, here's a takeaway first. Remember that the Republicans presently control 13 of 18 Pennsylvania seats, 5 of the current Democrat seats, 4 remaining safe, and a fifth. Trump won Northeast Pennsylvania seat held by Matt Cartwright. Remains likely a Democrat there. This is amazing what the Republicans were able to do in Pennsylvania by taking over the state government, all these House seats out of these primarily out of working class areas that they've done. A bit of housekeeping here. The number of Clinton districts won in Pennsylvania increased from 6 to 8 onto the new map. That means there are 25 Clinton districts represented by Republicans in the House, up from 23 previously. So hypothetically, Democrats could win extremely narrow House majority by capturing every Clinton-won district. That won't happen. However, we do not think this is realistic there. Well, part of it is also you look at in off-year election turnout. In some of these districts now with the grassroots movement, Madonna talked about the Women's March and that sort of thing. People are fired up, and as long as you keep grassroots organizations going, now with the young people marching on the 24th of March into D.C. in great numbers, one of the things that always happens is, and people have to realistically look at this, when you're fired up, you're fired up. But to keep people fired up, it's like a football team. The coach gives the players that. Of course, you're talking about basically an hour game. But to keep people fired up through the first quarter to the fourth quarter, or halftime talks sometimes do fire people up. So what progressive people have to do is keep people fired up, because you'll face a number of defeats. You have to remember the Republicans control the House, they control the Senate, Therefore, they can originate legislation in the House. They haven't done much of that. But also in the Senate, and they control the White House, the administrative part. They have a lot of Republican courts, so they can stymie people with those right-wingers on the Supreme Court. And at the same time, these various federal agencies have turned from people's agencies to pro-business agencies, period. The Medicaid, Medicare setup now favors adding less people to the roll. The people waiting almost 600 days to get a hearing for Social Security disability, or SSI. Those are things deliberately blocks put there to discourage people from applying to these programs. And now they're starting to get addressed. But it's a slow situation. Demand has to be made first, and people have to organize around these issues. That's why it's very important that people access the public news service. Professor Reich out of Berkeley, our own Dan Rava, and his updates. Because you have to get information, and if you have to get information that is accurate information, period. And you have to act on the information. That's the reason that here at the Boston Red Network we bring these stories to you from the Post, from Washington Post. And incidentally, now we on it, the New Yorker is upped their staff. We'll talk about this more on tomorrow. The week that was, as we cap the week's activities. Let me just move on quickly here, and we'll do a sport. We're running a little bit over. Nonetheless, we'll start with the National Basketball Association on Thursday night. The Nets were at the Hornets. Hornets won 11-96. The Knickerbockers were at the Magic. The Magic didn't have any magic. Knicks 120-113. The Wizards were at the Cavaliers in Cleveland and won the game 110-103. The 76ers were in Chicago, pulled off a 1-point victory over the Bulls, 116-115. The Thunder were at the Kings out in California, 110-107 Thunder. And finally, the Clippers and Warriors, it was all Warriors, 134-127. On to college basketball. Gonzaga, number 6, was at San Diego, 77-72. Gonzaga, Purdue, the Boilermakers, and Illinois. Purdue 93-86. Purdue is ranked number 9. University of Connecticut and number 11 Cincinnati, 77-52. And in overtime, Arizona and Oregon State. Arizona 75-65. And Pepperdine, don't hear much in out of Los Angeles. St. Mary's 75-61 over Pepperdine, and Houston number 23, and Memphis 91-85. On to Major League Baseball. We thought we wouldn't hear that one again, but spring training is on, and the Huskies, these are 7-inning games, generally speaking. The Huskies and Red Sox. The Red Sox 15-2 over the Huskies. Florida Southern and the Tigers. Tigers 6-1 in that game. The Spartans and Phillies. Spartans were shut out. 6-zip Phillies. The Eagles and the Red Sox are 4-2 in that final in 7. And the Gophers and Twins. Twins 2. The Gophers 1. Don't know about that one. How did the Gophers get there? Oh, well. And finally, the NBA, the Islanders and Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs 4-3. The Wild and Devils, 4-2 over the Devils of Jersey. The Blue Jackets and Flyers 2-1 in that contest. The Rangers and Canadiens 3-1. And the Lightning and Senators of Ottawa. The Lightning of Tampa Bay, Lightning 4-3. The Sabres and Red Wings. Detroit. Sabres 3-2. And they are from Buffalo. The Capitals and Panthers. Panthers 3-2 over the Capitals. The Sharks and Predators. The interesting name. The Sharks of San Jose and the Predators of Nashville. Anyway, nonetheless, the Predators devoured the Sharks. 7-1 was the final there. The Avalanche and Oilers. Oilers 3-2. The Flames and Coyotes. Flames are 5-2 over the Coyotes. And finally, the Stars and the Kings. The Stars of Dallas and the Kings of Los Angeles. And the Stars shut out the Kings in Los Angeles 2-0. That will do it for sports. We'll see you on the week, but was on Saturday morning. Hopefully we don't have technical difficulties like we did last week. And we'll have numbers, man. We'll talk economics from a macro standpoint, a little micro thrown in. And we'll get an open source report out and special programming for African History Week. Got several things coming out here, including one on the blockbuster movie, The Black Panther. It came out of the Black Panther comic books of 1966. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on a Saturday morning.